Good morning. My name is Scott. I'm one of the pastors here at the Grove, and I want to say thank you for joining with us online for our worship gathering. We are really looking forward to our time together today and the message that Pastor Mike will be bringing here in a little while, and then our time together in our Zoom breakout after the service. But many of you are a part of this Grove family, and you, like me, are looking forward to our ability to return back to live services. And so this week, we announced that we will be transitioning to live services as soon as Lackawanna County reaches the green phase. So there is a little bit of modification to that. We will be having two services instead of one. The first service will begin at 9:30 and the second will be at 11:30. Both of those gatherings will be pretty much the same, but they will be two separate gatherings, and there will be a little bit of time in between for us to resanitize and disinfect some of the surfaces that are here. But we're looking forward to a return to live services. If you're a part of the Grove family, you know what that's like. If you have been a guest with us online, you may have never actually experienced a live service. And so let me encourage you to go to our website, discoverthegrove.com. There you can find some information about who we are as a church, what we value, and it'll help you understand a little bit more of what it is that we're trying to accomplish here in North Scranton. After you spend some time looking at our website or checking out for announcements there, if you have more specific questions, let me encourage you. You can either shoot us an email at info@discoverthegrove, or you can call and text us at 570-687-8531. Today, after our service at 10:45, we will be having a Zoom breakout where we'll follow up with the sermon and catch up a little bit with each other, asking some questions about how we can apply this message to our lives and to stay connected together as a church.
You give light, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only. You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry. These bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry. These bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry. These bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. The torrent of destruction hid my darkened soul from rescuing. I cried to God for help, He heard my voice. The tainted earth, it rocked and reeled. The heavens bowed, the mountains kneeled. The thunderous voice of God, my covering. I will not be afraid. and faith with strength. So I advance with confidence in Christ. And precious truth delivers me from lies that wage a war in me. Your victory is mine for all my days. I will not be afraid, for my hope is in His name. Who is the rock but our God, whose blood has filled our freedom? Jesus, our Savior, Defender, Redeemer, still kneel down to raise me up. You, my Lord, you, my God, you rescue me with reckless love. Oh, my Lord, oh, my God. Who is the rock but our God, whose blood has filled our freedom? Jesus, our Savior, Defender, Redeemer. Oh, Jesus, our Savior, Defender,
Good morning, friends. My name is Mike. I'm one of the pastors here at the Grove Church, and I want to thank you for taking some time this morning to spend with us as we continue this series called Life Sketches. In this series, we've been looking at transition points in the scriptures, and these transition points are places where people engage with God and things change. It could be as simple as answering a question, or it could be as complex as picking up everything they own and moving to a different place that they're not even sure where they're going yet. Whatever it looks like, what we're seeing is that people who lived thousands of years ago are not that different from you and I. People are still people. They still have concerns, their fears, their joys, their celebrations. They still make decisions. They still second guess their decisions. They're just like us. And the circumstances may be different, but people are the same. So today we're going to take a look at Jacob, at a portion of Jacob's life. Jacob is Abraham's grandchild. He's the son of Isaac and Rebekah. And Jacob's path was not an easy one. His troubles began early, his troubles began really early in the womb with his twin brother. Here's what we see in Genesis chapter 25. But the two children struggled with each other in her womb. So she went to ask the Lord about it. Why is this happening to me? She asked. And the Lord told her, the sons in your womb will become two nations. From the very beginning, the two nations will be rivals. One nation will be stronger than the other, and your older son will serve your younger son. Now, this is unique in that typically the firstborn receives the spiritual blessing as well as an inheritance. And so this prophecy that God gave to Rebekah, it was unusual because God declared that the younger son would take a higher position than the older son. And it didn't matter that they were twins, because whoever comes out first is the older son. Move on to verse 25 in chapter 25. When the time came, the twin boys were born. The first one was very red at birth and covered with thick hair like a fur coat. So they named him Esau, which literally means hairy. Then the other twin was born, and his hand was grasping Esau's heel. So they named him Jacob. These two brothers were contentious in the womb, and even during birth, Jacob was grasping at Esau's heel. We almost get the picture that he was like holding on, trying to pull him back in. He wanted to be first. Jacob wanted to be the one first, moving forward. And so he was grasping his way forward, fighting with him. And that's what Jacob means. Literally, it means heel grabber. They were not really into creative names. So you have the hairy one and heel grabber. This is what was happening when they were born. But this name means more than just holding on to his heel. It means, Jacob means grasping for more. Not just holding on to the heel, but actually trying to get more. The one trying to be in front. And this is exactly how Jacob lived his life. The two boys could not have been more different. Esau grew into a hunter-gatherer type. He was like the manly man, big, strong, and impetuous, and bold. He was Isaac's favorite. That doesn't really give us much indication as to why. It could be because he was always out hunting and getting the meat that his father liked. It could also be because Isaac maybe saw in Esau a strength and a boldness that he never possessed. Whatever it was, Isaac favored Esau and Rebekah favored Jacob. But Esau was not very smart. Esau got the brawn, and Jacob definitely got the brains. Jacob was more of a shepherd than a hunter. He was thoughtful. He was careful. He was patient. He was conniving. And that difference is no better demonstrated than when Jacob actually took Esau's birthright to the inheritance. The story goes, Esau was out hunting, probably through the night, and he comes in. He was out for a long time, and he came back home, and Jacob was preparing a meal. Said he was preparing a soup, a lentil stew. And Esau said he was starving, and he demanded Jacob give him some food. We see this in verses 31 through 33. "All right," Jacob replied, "but trade me your rights as the firstborn son." "Look, I'm dying of starvation," said Esau. "What good is my birthright to me now?" But Jacob said, "First you must swear that your birthright is mine." So Esau swore an oath, thereby selling all his rights as firstborn to his brother Jacob. Esau gave up his inheritance for a bowl of lentil soup. It wasn't in Esau's nature to think ahead. It wasn't like he was out there with no other food. There had to be other places he could get food, but he walks in and he has an immediate need to be filled, and he just wants to fill that need right then and there, not thinking ahead, not thinking of the future. And Jacob knew this. Jacob knew that he could take advantage of Esau in this moment, grasping at Esau's heel, clawing his way to the top. A similar thing happened years later when Isaac was getting old and his eyesight was failing. This time, Rebekah helped Jacob trick Isaac into blessing Jacob instead of Esau. And this time, Esau was so angry that he planned to kill Jacob after Isaac died. Esau had had enough of Isaac's scheming and conniving. And he said, "I'm going to kill him. I'm going to wait till father dies, and then I'm going to kill him." So Jacob fled. Jacob ran away from home. He spent 20 years in exile, a time when he worked hard, he got married, had a bunch of kids. He continued scheming his way to wealth. The man he worked for manipulated him for years as well. But God seemed to keep looking out for Jacob, as if he had some plan in mind that was still unfolding. And after 20 years, God came to Jacob and said, "It's time to go home. You've been here long enough." So the whole family, the wives, children, huge herds of various animals, as well as everyone that worked for Jacob, they all packed up and they headed back to his homeland. And the closer Jacob got, the more afraid he becomes. Esau's had 20 years to nurse a grudge. What if he kills him as soon as he returns? He could do that. And it's not as if Esau was ever a patient or reasonable man. So Jacob sends messengers ahead to inform Esau that he's coming, just to let him know he's on his way. When they return, they tell Jacob that as soon as Esau heard Jacob was coming, he left with 400 men to meet him. Now that did nothing to assuage Jacob's anxiety. He was so scared that he actually divided his camp in half, figuring that if one camp got attacked, the other camp would at least possibly be able to escape. He also sent literally hundreds of goats, sheep, cattle, camels, donkeys, whatever he had, he sent a portion of them ahead as gifts, hoping that if Esau saw the gifts coming first, that would maybe calm him down. He wouldn't be as likely to attack him. So they get to the river Jabbok, which acts as kind of a border. He sends everyone across the camp, everybody that works for him. He sends all of his herds, everyone across the river. And he's left alone at the camp with his wives and children while they all cross. And that night, under the cover of darkness, he even sends his wives and children across. And he returns to be alone on the other side. Now I have to think that as Jacob sat there on the river bank, that he's feeling the weight of his past. All the tricks and schemes, the grasping for wealth and control had led him here, alone in the dark, on the border of his homeland. He was a wealthy man for sure, but at what cost? Jacob had spent 20 years away from home, away from his family, away from his own inheritance, in a foreign land, amassing wealth that was now across the river serving as a blockade against his own twin brother, who was on his way with a private army, possibly to kill him. He had no idea. Now, here on the borders of his own inheritance, Jacob felt neither wealthy nor powerful. And that's when he got tackled to the ground. And Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the breaking of the day. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he touched his hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. Then he said, this is the stranger, then he said, "Let me go, for the day has broken." But Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." And he said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." What a twist! A stranger out of the darkness jumps Jacob, wrestles him all night, dislocating his hip in the process. At daybreak, Jacob still has no explanation of what is happening. But one thing he knows for sure is he is not letting go. Because he realized something. Jacob realized that if the stranger could dislocate his hip with just the touch of his hand, then he could have overpowered him at any moment in the night. The stranger allowed the struggle to go on just as much as he's allowing Jacob to grasp onto him now, just as much as he allowed Jacob to ask for a blessing. The struggle was not a struggle in which the stranger wondered if he could win. It was a struggle in which Jacob had to come to recognize his own weakness. His hip dislocated, his endurance pushed to the limits, Jacob still is grasping. He grasps for a blessing in the same way that he grasped at his brother's heel at birth, in the same way that he grasped the inheritance from Esau, in the same way that he grasped the blessing from his father, he's grasping still. In response to his request, the stranger asks him his name. It's kind of an odd thing to say. Kind of makes me think that was the point all along. That the point of the wrestling match was to get to this place where he asks him his name. He makes him say his own name, not because he didn't know it, but because Jacob had to admit it. "What is your name?" he asked him. "I'm Jacob. I'm the grasper. I'm the schemer. I'm the manipulator." Jacob had made it this far as the heel grabber, but he would make it no further. No, he was alone now. He was hobbled by a dislocated hip, holding on for dear life to a stranger that he's coming to realize was really no stranger at all. This was the one God. Because only the one God could turn his own name into a conviction. Only the one God could debilitate him with a touch. And I wonder if the more painful wound was his hip or the realization that he had lived up to his own name. There on the shores of the river, he held tightly to the stranger. Be it God or a messenger from God, he didn't know. But his grasp was no longer reaching for wealth or for power. He was now holding on to a lifeline. Where the blessing of Isaac was a trick against an old blind man, the blessing he asks for now is one of utter desperation. God brought him to the point of knowing that Jacob had nothing without him. "What is your name?" the man asked. He replied, "Jacob." "Your name will no longer be Jacob," the man told him. "From now on, you will be called Israel, because you have fought with God and with men and have won. No longer the heel grabber, no longer the schemer, no longer the manipulator. Jacob is given a new name, a new identity. Israel. It means struggles with God, as in a wrestling match that lasts all night, or maybe a lifetime. It doesn't mean battles against God. It doesn't mean fights against God as one does with an enemy. No, it means struggles to understand, struggles to trust. It's faith that falters, but still tries. It means working out faith with fear and trembling. It's a lot like you and I. We've had days when our names could be Israel too. And what a beautiful thing that God names him Israel. He doesn't belittle him. He doesn't make more demands. He actually tells Jacob, "You've struggled, but you've won." He's struggled to be faithful in the twists and turns of life. He's struggled with what others have done to him and with what God has allowed to have happen. Yet his faith in the one true God has remained. This very physical all-night wrestling match mirrors the internal wrestling match that Jacob has endured. The one that says he must hold on, he must control, he must grasp. In the end, it was the wound. It was the wound that changed him. It was the wound of God that brought him to a new place where he was no longer grasping for control, but holding on for dear life. A new name may not have been the blessing that he was looking for. It doesn't even really sound like a blessing. But to have his true identity spoken over him by the one God, this may be the greatest blessing anyone could have hoped for. And Jacob named the place Penuel, which means face of God. For he said, "I have seen God face to face, yet my life has been spared." The sun was rising as Jacob left Penuel, and he was limping. We don't often leave an encounter with God without a limp of some sort, because we struggle. To encounter God is often to encounter ourselves, our own weaknesses, our own frailty, our own sin. We can't stand before God as we are and come out unscathed. But it's not because he wants to hurt us. It's because he wants to get rid of the infection of sin within us. Until we give up the wrestling and start holding on for dear life, we will continue to walk around infected. C.S. Lewis wrote, "The human spirit will not even begin to try to surrender self-will as long as all seems to be well with it." Now, error and sin both have this property, that the deeper they are, the less their victim suspects their existence. They're masked evil. Pain is unmasked, unmistakable evil. Every person knows that something is wrong when they are being hurt. In our pain, we can choose to embrace the one who wounds but also heals, or we can turn away. Jacob walked with a limp for the rest of his life, and he also had an entire nation named after him, a race chosen by God to bring Christ into the world. We may not find ourselves in a wrestling match like Jacob did, but we do in other ways. We grasp for control, then maybe we give back a little, then we try to take it back again. It's a constant pushing and pulling to give up our own strength and to follow hard after God. It's the constant questions of life that God is always asking. In those questions, do you trust me? Some days we do, and some days we don't. And that's okay. Dennis Prager, in commenting on the name Israel, he said God was not only giving people permission to struggle with him, he was actually asking us to. Doing so makes our faith authentic, and it is that authenticity which keeps us from turning into religious automatons. The important thing is, like Jacob, that we keep coming back to God. Like the man who spoke these beautiful words to Jesus, "Lord, I believe. Help me with my unbelief." There is more faith in the struggle with God than there is in ignoring him. We can say we believe and still forget him. Jacob's journey is like all of our journeys of faith. And so I ask, where are you along the path? Are you wounded but wiser? Or maybe just wounded? Can you relate to Jacob's limp? What has God revealed to you in your pain? We struggle sometimes in the moment like a wounded animal lashing out at the nearest helping hand. And that nearest hand usually is the Lord. And when the lashing out is done and the wrestling is over, it's then that we take stock in our injuries. Some wounds being self-caused, but the wounds of God have purpose. They are a reminder of our own weakness and sin that he is trying to purge from our lives. We need to pay attention to our wounds and hold tightly to the healer. For God may hurt us, but he also heals us. And the healing goes deeper than the hurt. Maybe you're still in the wrestling match. Maybe you're still struggling to come out on top, proud of your stubbornness, but weakened by it. What is it that you're seeking to maintain control of? Maybe a more revealing question is to consider what giving up control looks like. What about giving up control makes you afraid? Maybe you relate more to Jacob in exile. It was comfortable. He was making a good life for himself. Everything seemed to be going well there. He was building his tiny empire. But it wasn't where he was meant to be. He may have spent his life there if God hadn't spoken. Jacob may have spent his whole life in the wrong place if he wasn't listening to God's voice, telling him to go home. Are you listening? Are you attentive to God's voice? He is always speaking, always calling, always revealing. There is a call on our lives to be in the place we were meant to be. And it's not an easy path to get there, but it is where we belong. Let's take some time now to consider these questions in prayer. Father, we belong with you more than anything else. And now, as we've looked at Jacob's life and we've looked at his struggle, we recognize our own struggle, our own weakness, our own desire to have all the answers and to be able to control how this journey moves and how it ends. But you have us on a journey, Lord. You have us on a path and you are directing our steps. And I ask, Father, that now you would help us as we evaluate where we are. Show us, are we wounded? Where is the pain coming from? Where are the wounds that you have caused that need healing, that goes deeper into our hearts? Where are we in the wrestling? Are we still trying to hold on to so much, or have you taught us to let go? And what does letting go look like? Are we in the wrong place? Whether that is physically or spiritually, are you taking us somewhere and we're trying to stay put? I ask, Lord, that you would reveal to us where you want to take us, because we want to be with you. And we want to serve you, and we want to honor your name. I pray now that you would speak to us and that you would guide and direct us. We ask this all in Jesus' name. Amen.
Come thou fount of every blessing, tune my heart to sing thy grace. Streams of mercy never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise, and teach me some melodious sonnet sung by flaming tongues above. Praise the mountain fixed upon it, mount of thy redeeming love. Sorrowing I shall be in spirit till released from flesh and sin. Yet from what I do inherit, hear thy praises I'll begin. Here I raise my Ebenezer, here by thy great help I've come, and I hope by thy good pleasure sinning, I shall see thy lovely face, clothed then in blood-washed linen. How I'll sing thy sovereign grace. Come, my Lord, no longer tarry. Take my ransom soul away. Send thine angels now to carry me to realms of endless day. Prone to wander, Lord, I feel it. Prone to leave the God I love. Here's my heart. Oh, take and seal it for thy courts above. Here's my heart, oh, take and seal it